make her sleep through the night, but for a little over a fortnight now, Claire Ashton had slept for only 2 hours, before waking again at 11. It was the same pattern each night. As the grandfather clock on the landing beat out its inexorable rhythm, she would lie cold and restless, with a dull pain mounting in her chest and spine, while her mind flooded with long-forgotten memories, as vivid, sometimes more vivid, than the original events themselves. Tiny, irrelevant details, a stain on her sundress, a patch of unshaved stubble on her father's cheek, would manifest with dazzling clarity. Smells, too, her mother's scent, the smoke from the wood stove in the living room, the damp wool of her winter coat. The odd thing was, these recollections were only of childhood. Her body, and she was always conscious of her body, was flat-chested and slender-hipped. A boy's body, her grandmother had once said in gently mocking tones that still rung hurtfully in her ears. A little girl with the body of a boy until she was nearly 14 years old. The last among her friends to grow breasts, the last to bleed. Yet in most other important respects, she had been first. The first to marry, the first to give birth, the first and only one among them to lose a child. And soon, aged only 35, she would be the first to die. Something had gone wrong somewhere along the line. Not something that had happened to her, but something in her makeup, in her wiring. For as far back as her memory stretched, she had always felt more than a little off-kilter. As a girl, she had found no words to express it. As an adult, nearing the end of her life, Claire had found the perfect encapsulation. It was as if she had always been a reluctant visitor to this world. Part of her, she had come to realize, had never wanted to arrive here in the first place. If the prospect of death in 2 months' time held any consolation, it was in the hope that she would finally get to meet that reluctant part of herself, and to understand who, in fact, she really was. And if there was nothing to come, if the lights simply were to extinguish, then none of it mattered anyway. Everything from beginning to end would have been meaningless, a monstrous joke. It was nearly 11:30 when she heard Philip's footsteps on the lane and the creak of the gate as he returned from one of his increasingly frequent late-night runs. The closer Claire came to the end, the more restless her husband seemed to become. More often than not, he would sleep in the spare room. "I don't like to disturb you," he would explain softly, but it was he who was disturbed, not she. A man who ran marathons and began each day with 200 press-ups was never going to feel comfortable lying next to a dying woman. Who could blame him? Besides, he had students to teach in the morning. A classroom full of bright-eyed private school teenagers, brimming with hope for the future. He was too considerate not to meet them each day with energy and optimism. Of the two of them, it was Philip who had always been the selfless one, the coper, the one who had kept up the daily routines in the bleak months after they lost Susie. Without Philip's strength, Claire was certain she wouldn't have lasted 1 year, let alone 10. Sometimes she pictured him as a widower, alone in the house, quiet and stoical, his hair cut shorter as it slowly turned grey, his body even leaner and harder as he doused his inevitable guilt at surviving her with an ever more punishing exercise regime. There would be women, of course, but she couldn't imagine him falling in love again. He had already done that twice in his life, and each time it had brought him nothing but unhappiness. No. Despite his best intentions, the women he let into his bed would never possess him, as she had done, and it would trouble him deeply that he couldn't give the devotion they craved. Perhaps when he was old, when she had become nothing more than a faded photograph, he might let down his defences again and lay himself open, but by then he would be a stranger about whom, imagining him now, she found it hard to care. That was another thing she had noticed about dying.